Maples, Tucker, and Jacobs have stood with the work years, providing skilled legal representation for your workplace injury claims. When you are injured on the job, it can be a scary time, but the attorneys at Maples, Tucker, and Jacobs have the experience to guide you through the process to make sure that you and your family are properly taken care of and your rights are protected. If you need help, call the attorneys at Maple, Tucker, and Jacobs at 855-617-9333 or visit online at www.mtandj.com. No representation is made that the quality of legal services is greater than the quality of legal services provided by other law firms.
Hey, you listen to conservative talk radio all week. Why don't you try something different for a change? The Majority Report with Sam Cedar is a 5-time award-winning daily left-wing political talk show. We go live every weekday at 11 a.m. Central Time on our YouTube channel. You can find it by searching for The Majority Report. We talk about the news, we take libertarian callers, we have debates, we interview guests on topics ranging from the post-Civil War Reconstruction era, child poverty, capitalism, the intellectual dark web, and more. And that's all just within the last month. If you want to hear what smart, progressive political talk that is occasionally amusing sounds like, then you need to tune in. And you're always welcome to call in if you want to hear the correct opinion on any given topic. I will give it to you. Tune in to The Majority Report at 11 a.m. Central Time on YouTube or later wherever you get your podcasts.
WVNN. Depend on it. You're listening to the Valley Labor Report with David Story and Jacob Morrison.
The time has come for America to hear the truth.
We are going to stand with them, and not only are we going to fight for their rights, but we're going to stand up for our rights here in our state, in our homes, and in our community.
One day longer, one day stronger. One day longer, one day stronger.
Because the future of labor's rights in the United States of America is not going to be decided in the courts. It's not going to be decided in Congress. It's not going to be decided on talk radio, and it sure is not going to be decided on Fox News.
Solidarity forever. Solidarity forever. Solidarity forever. For the union makes us strong.
Good morning, Tennessee Valley. This is the Valley Labor Report. My name is Adam Keller, here with my co-host and fellow agitator, David Story. It's Saturday, May 8th, 2021, and we're broadcasting live online and on the radio on WVNN here in the Huntsville, Decatur, Athens listening area, right here in Athens, Alabama. A recording of this program will play tomorrow, Sunday, May 9th, 2021, on the great WGOL in Russellville, Alabama, and sometime next week on WHIV in New Orleans, Louisiana. Today, we are talking about criminal injustice in Huntsville, Alabama, Teacher Appreciation Week, and we'll touch on headlines across the world of organized labor and the Alabama legislature. We're taking your calls, more, all that on today's Valley Labor Report. Remember, folks, the North Alabama DSA has a necessities drive this Saturday from 3 to 5 p.m. at the IBEW Local 558 Union Hall on Clinton Avenue, right across from Yellowhammer and Campus 805. So bring by your non-perishable food items, PPE, clothes, blankets, all that good stuff, and your donations will all be forwarded to the Manor House. Follow at DSA North Alabama on Twitter for more information. If you want to see what we're up to throughout the week, get our snide quips about the news of the day, then follow us on social media. Facebook.com/The Valley Labor Report, Twitter at Labor Reporters, at Jacob M_AL, and at Radical Unionist. If you missed part of the show and you want to go back and watch it later, search on YouTube for the Valley Labor Report. Please subscribe to our channel. You can go back and watch the full show there, and we also clip segments throughout the week. We also upload the program on more than 11 different podcasting apps, so to see if we are on your listening platform of choice, go to thevalleylaborreport.transistor.fm/subscribe. We do have a website where you can buy our hats and our stickers at thevalleylaborreport.org. And if you appreciate our work and you want to keep us on the air, please consider throwing us a couple bucks on our patreon.com/thevalleylaborreport. So good morning. As you can tell, this is not Jacob, this is Adam, and I'm here with my brother David. Jacob is not here with us today for a family function, so it's just us two trying to hold down the fort. David, how you doing, man?
I cannot complain. Good morning, Hunts Vegas and comrades around the world.
That's right. So please bear with me today. As you know, I'm still new, trying to get the hang of things, but I'm really excited about today's show. We have quite a few things we can talk about. Many of you in the Huntsville area know we've had a lot of developments in terms of criminal justice reform and lack of reform, as well as the rather surprising guilty verdict of Officer Darby yesterday. And we do have a new friend of the show, an activist, calling in here shortly to talk a little bit more about that. This past week was Teacher Appreciation Week, and that is something that is very dear to my heart. Well, David, I know you have public school students in your family. I'm a former public school educator, have many public school workers and educators in my family, so I wanted to talk a little bit about how we can truly appreciate educators, not just with stickers and biscuits. Those are appreciated too. And there is a lot going on across the state of Alabama as our legislature is wrapping up, and we have seen some
good news.
Some good news
out of Montgomery. I mean, to be able to say we have good news coming out of Montgomery is like a rarity.
It really is. If this past week, if you looked up in the sky, you saw some pigs flying. To all of our listeners down in hell, if you felt a nice chilly breeze, that was the Alabama legislature actually doing something positive for the everyday people of this state. So we'll talk a little bit about that later on in the show. And there has been some fairly significant actions across the labor movement in this country. We had a huge victory of nurses just this week, and we also have quite a few locals still on strike, including our brothers down in Brookwood, Alabama. Over 1,100 miners still on strike. So stay tuned. We do have some special support we plan to lend those guys. I'm looking forward to sharing more about that in the next couple of weeks. So I wanted to start this morning and just talk a little bit about Huntsville, Alabama. That's sort of our home base. Now, we know we have a lot of listeners from across the world, across the country. But Huntsville, Alabama has been struggling as of late to deal with criminal justice. And we talked a couple weeks ago about the massive protests we had in the summer, which were met with CS gas, pepper spray, rubber bullets. And we talked a little bit about the advisory committee's report and the lack of real response from our city council and our mayor. The city did have its promised work session after that report was revealed, where they talked quite a bit. Can't say there's been a ton of solutions to come out of that talking, and hopefully our friend Chad's going to call in and tell us a little bit more about that. And just this week, the biggest thing really is we had a Huntsville police officer who was found guilty of murder just yesterday. And, you know, that's a pretty historic thing, first of all, for the fact that he even was brought up on charges, quite frankly, is a little surprising.
Yeah, well, I mean, he basically executed the guy in cold blood. I mean, they didn't have any choice.
Yeah, my understanding of the case, and you know, I wasn't there, I wasn't on the jury by any means, but my understanding of this case is that you had a gentleman named Jeffrey Parker who was suicidal. He was holding a gun to his head. It's my understanding actually it was a flare gun. It was not an actual handgun. His family called the police for help, as you often do when you have a family member in crisis, though I think more of us are learning how dangerous that can be.
Yeah.
So the police showed up to this house, and you had two veteran officers who were trying to de-escalate the situation.
And doing a good job.
Doing a good job,
I might add.
Yes, doing what we all would like our officers to do.
Yeah.
I believe it was a seasoned black woman officer who was actually kind of handling the scene. Well, in rushes Officer Darby. He shows up, busts into the house with a shotgun, and within less than 1 minute, blew off the head of this suicidal man.
Yeah.
And not surprisingly, the Huntsville police had actually cleared him of any wrongdoing. It was actually later that the district attorney did bring him up on charges. Now, the rumor mill is that was in part because the body cam footage and how damning it was, and the other part was that the other officers on the scene were very adamant that there was wrongdoing.
Yeah.
And they were willing to testify to that effect.
Yeah.
And surprise, surprise, neither of those officers are still with the force, which is, unfortunately what we see so often when, a police officer is trying to do the right thing and they violate that thin blue line, that code among officers, and they actually try to represent the people, and, they are often chased out of the force.
It's unfortunate. It's just extremely unfortunate that you had two officers on the scene that were doing good work, and they're no longer employed.
Right.
I mean, that really speaks to the justice system in general.
And honestly, I'm scared for those two officers. I worry about them. They did the right thing for the people, and it's unfortunate that so often in our society, doing the right thing for the people puts you at risk.
Yep.
Of retaliation in various ways. So we actually had this trial ongoing this week, and after body cam footage, after testimonies, after deliberation, a jury of his peers convicted Officer Darby of murder. Somewhat surprising, a pleasant surprise, really, to see some accountability. It's not going to bring Mr. Parker back, but it is nice to see the criminal justice system work as it's supposed to for a change. We've all heard about Officer Chauvin's trial, of course, up in Minnesota. And unfortunately, there are so many of these cases of police violence that have really dominated the news lately. So we wanted to make sure people knew that we have a similar situation right here in Huntsville, Alabama.
What was even more surprising to me was your illustrious mayor's response to the conviction of supporting a murderer. I mean, he basically come out in 100% support of a murderer, and I was just sitting there looking at that and thought, I don't know, man. I don't get that whole. I don't get it. I can't see it.
I thought that there was no way I could have less respect for the mayor of this city, Mayor Tear Gas Tommy Battle. But I do, because as David alluded to, immediately after the verdict, Huntsville Mayor Tommy Battle released a statement, which typically, the politicians say they can't comment on ongoing litigation or matters of litigation. So I want to quote from Mayor Battle. This is a direct quote from his statement immediately after a guilty verdict. Quote, "While I respect the jury's opinion, I disagree with the verdict. We recognize this was a hard case with a lot of technical information to process. Officer Darby followed the appropriate safety protocols in his response on the scene. He was doing what he was trained to do in the line of duty. Fortunately, Officer Darby has the same appeal rights as any other citizen and is entitled to exercise those rights."
Yeah, and that really speaks to, here is the issue that I have with this whole thing is I don't doubt Mayor Battles. I don't doubt that he wasn't doing what he was trained to do. I'm beginning to question the training.
Right.
That, if your immediate response to someone that is suicidal, it's not like this was an unknown situation where they were going in and there was a possibility of some type of ambush.
Right. He never pointed any weapon at anyone else but himself.
Yeah, they had police on the scene that were handling it. It went out over 911 that it was a suicidal situation. And if your training is to shoot somebody in that situation, then there should be some reform to that system. And the fact that Mayor Battles is saying he was doing what he was trying to do speaks to why there are people that are extremely frustrated with the system right now.
Yeah, I mean, what the mayor said, in other words, is we asked him to do this. We train officers to go in to a situation where someone is suicidal, and we go ahead and just kill them.
Yeah.
Don't worry about killing yourself. We'll take care of that for you. We'll blow your head off. No need for you to commit suicide. That's insane that the mayor is talking about this and insulting the jury. It's not their opinion. It's their verdict.
Yeah.
And I noticed he used that word opinion.
Yep.
So
we got Chad. He called in, so we got about 15 more minutes left in this segment. Seconds left in this segment, and we'll bring him on the other
so we're going to talk a little bit more about the mayor's statement, the Huntsville police chief statement, and a little bit more about what's going to happen with this case on the other side.
Yep. Folks, you're listening to the Valley Labor Report. Hang around. We'll be right back.
You're listening to the Valley Labor Report with David Story and Jacob Morrison.
The attorneys at Maples, Tucker, and Jacobs have stood with the working people of Alabama for over 40 years, providing skilled legal representation for your workplace injury claims. When you are injured on the job, it can be a scary time, but the attorneys at Maples, Tucker, and Jacobs have the experience to guide you through the process to make sure that you and your family are properly taken care of and your rights are protected. If you need help, call the attorneys at Maple, Tucker, and Jacobs at 855-617-9333 or visit online at www.mtandj.com. No representation is made that the quality of legal services is greater than the quality of legal services provided by other law firms.
All workers deserve fair wages, affordable health care, and a retirement plan that enables them to retire with dignity. All workers deserve to have a say about the terms and conditions of their employment, not just the bosses. With the machinist unions over 600,000 members having our back, Local Lodge 44 in Decatur, Alabama has been serving workers' interests for over 20 years. Our members have the best health insurance in the area with zero deductible plans. We set the bar for pay in the area with over $40 an hour rates, consistently averaging the highest non-college degree jobs in North Alabama with some of the best retirement plans in the industry. We can do the same for you. Together, we remain united, raising our voices to ensure justice on the job and service in the community. The Machinist Union is a true Southern union founded in Atlanta in 1888. We have been serving members' needs for 132 years. The longevity of our union proves our dedication and loyalty to the working class. The Machinist Union isn't just for machinists. We represent workers in government, healthcare, auto workers, aerospace workers, transportation workers, the defense industry, and woodworking. Our members even build the iconic Harley-Davidson motorcycles. If you're ready to get serious about better benefits and wages, if you want to have a voice in your workplace with over 600,000 members to back you up, call or email us today at 256-286-3704 or organize at iamaw44.org.
Here in Huntsville, federal employees are an invaluable part of the nation's defense, offering unmatched expertise in engineering and technology and as stewards of taxpayer dollars. What we ask for in return is to be treated with fairness, dignity, and respect. The American Federation of Government Employees, AFGE Local 1858, is a union of working people looking out for each other, making sure that we're treated right. To inquire about joining or to learn more, call 256-876-4880.
Hey y'all, are you tired of hearing that the South is just a bunch of racist rednecks? Well, tune in to Dixieland of the Proletariat podcast. We talk about Southern working class history and current events through a leftist perspective. Join Nelson, Senior Telecommunications Director Tommy, Comrade Kate, former pig farmer Tyler, and Brother William, wherever you stream your podcast. And good Lord willing and the creek don't rise, we'll see y'all next time. It's Dixieland of the Proletariat, y'all.
WVNN.
Put it there, boy, and we'll show these fascists what a couple of hillbillies can do.
right, folks. Thanks for joining us on the Valley Labor Report this morning. We were talking a little bit about a case here in Huntsville, Alabama. We have a police officer who was found guilty yesterday of murder. We have a local activist, Chad Chavez, who wants to call in and tell us a little bit more about this case. He's been following this issue along with other criminal justice reform issues in the city of Huntsville. So we're glad to have him in, calling in and sharing a little bit of expertise. We talked about the Mayor Tommy Battle's statement. Police Chief McMurray also put out a statement we can talk about with Chad. And I wanted to just emphasize why this is important. And the labor movement, really our key mantra is an injury to one is an injury to all. Yeah. And to me, that's not just a slogan. That's a spiritual understanding.
Yeah, that's something that we live by.
And when people are victimized by the police, that is an injury to all of us as working class people.
Yeah.
When people are struggling with mental illness and they're met with violence instead of health care, that is an injury to all of the working class. So that's why it's important to me and why it's important to all of us and all of you listening. So, David, we have Chad on the line.
Yep. Good morning, Chad.
Hey, good morning.
Good morning. Chad, can you hear me this morning?
I can hear you great.
Awesome. So thank you so much for joining us. On the other side of the break, we mentioned the case just in brief summary, and we did read Mayor Battle's statement. So first, tell us a little bit about who you are and how you've been following these issues in Huntsville.
My name's Chad Chavez. I have been involved in political campaigns, since I was 18, been volunteering or working, doing that kind of stuff. But over the past year, I've been involved with the Citizens Coalition for Justice Reform, doing advocacy work in Huntsville for, criminal justice reform. We started with the protests in June, and since then have really been attending, every council meeting, working with city officials, to try to put some new reforms into place, because I think what Darby and the incidents of June 1st and June 3rd have really shown is that, Huntsville Police Department is kind of falling behind in reforms.
Right. And as David alluded to, I mean, if you're saying Darby acted according to training, well, holy crap, we have a training problem. Because if you're training officers to do something that's going to get you convicted of murder, well, hell, that's not fair to anybody.
Yeah, I was glad to hear you guys talking about that, because that's been Mayor Battle and Chief McMurray's defense for a while. But even during the trial, Captain McCarver was on the stand saying that this is how they train people. And I think that if you're training people to fire upon people in mental health crisis because they don't drop the gun, but they aren't pointing it at you, that's a dangerous precedent. And I think we should question the wisdom of sending them out to mental health calls if that's the training.
Yeah, well, and it also speaks to the fact that if this is your training and this officer just committed murder and was convicted of murder, then there are some accomplices there that we may need to start considering. If you're training these officers to do this and they're risking their freedom to do what you've told them to do, then in my opinion, Mayor Battles, you're an accomplice to this crime. And it's something the district attorney needs to be looking into.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like you said, it's not fair to the citizens of Huntsville, and it's not fair to Huntsville police to know that either they risk reprimand, like the two officers that were on the scene with Darby, or they risk these charges. There's definitely a need to take a look at this training because it's setting officers up for failure in addition to the citizens of Huntsville.
So, Chad, has there been any actual talk of changing the training of Huntsville police? I mean, we've talked a lot about these issues with training, and now they're bringing this up even in the context of this case yesterday. But has there been any discussion from the mayor, the chief, the council? How do they plan to address this?
So the biggest reform that we've seen offered came from Council Member Francis Akridge, who has asked the police department to essentially start studying the possibility of adding full mental health workers to the teams that would respond to crises like this. The concerning part is that, that study's going to take a while. The police department has been very upfront about how slow that's going to be, so it could be still, months or years before we see anything from that, but that's the most concrete. Given what we've seen from Mayor Battle and Chief McMurray, I also worry that they don't have a lot of incentive to put that into place.
No, that's the problem.
But hopefully the verdict yesterday will jumpstart a lot of that.
Yeah, I mean, it's frustrating because I'm friends with a lot of mental health workers. My sister personally is a mental health worker, and these people deal with these type of issues every day, and we need those people involved on these call outs. I mean, yeah, you need the police there for support, but the police are not trained properly and professionally in dealing with mental health crises. And
clearly, I mean, they're admitting it.
Yeah. There's really.
They're justifying it.
Yeah. They don't even have to. You're trained with a gun and pepper spray. You're not trained to deal with people and I'm not saying that they're not trained at all. I'm sure there's some, they touch on mental health issues in the police department, but they're not trained at the level that a counselor or a psychologist would be to de-escalate a situation like that. And to even say this is going to be a long ongoing process is asinine, because it shouldn't be. There should be some mental health workers that are tied to that department or even to the fire department, who most of us trust so much more because they're not carrying guns, to where they get called out on these issues and have the ability to save someone's life.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the danger of a review that takes years is that we've seen multiple people in the past 6 months in Huntsville killed in mental health crisis. Whether you're talking about Bradley Pugh. The longer we spend on this, dragging our feet, the more risk it is to citizens. It's not fair to the police officers to
hey, Chad, we're coming right up on a break.
To compare with
talk and weather station WVNN Athens, WVNN FM Trinity, a Cumulus station. It's 10 o'clock.
From ABC News, I'm Dave Packard. Another milestone in the fight against the pandemic. More than 150 million Americans have received at least one dose of the COVID vaccine. But there could be a major snag as vaccine rates are down significantly in the last week, according to an HHS document obtained by ABC News. And we're still seeing outbreaks.
The U.S. may not fully achieve herd immunity in terms of completely eliminating the spread of COVID like early predictions had hoped, says White House science advisor Dr. David Kessler, especially if those hesitant to receive a shot continue to stay away.
If you've been vaccinated, talk to somebody who's not been vaccinated. We just have to be able to help people overcome those fears. We're very close.
Kessler telling San Francisco ABC News affiliate KGO his team's recruiting everyone from faith leaders to celebrities to urge people to get protected. Chuck Sievertson, ABC News.
A cyber attack prompting the operator to shut down 5,500 miles of pipeline, which supplies nearly half of the gasoline and jet fuel for the East Coast. A manhunt in Texas for 48-year-old Trent Pascal, accused of cutting off his ankle monitor and holding a car salesman at knife point while out on bond for allegedly murdering his wife. Michael Kitchen, who along with his wife is now raising his dead daughter's children.
My wife was assaulted. Our daughter was murdered. And I can only imagine what's going through the children's mind.
U.S. Marshals now offering an $11,000 reward. Disappointing jobs numbers, only about 266,000 jobs created in April. That's less than half of the number from March. Unemployment edged up. The Biden administration on the defensive. Labor Secretary Marty Walsh.
You can't look at it month by month. You look at it over a period of time. Over the last 3 months, we've added about 1.5 million jobs to the economy, which has been great.
Jobs were added in leisure and hospitality. In Afghanistan, 25 killed when a bomb exploded near a school in Kabul today. At least 50 wounded. No claims of responsibility. You're listening to ABC News.
It's all about the nose. It's your air filter, the first line of defense against bacteria and viruses. If too many germs get stuck in your nose, guess what? You get sick. That's why it's so important to keep your nose clean, just like washing your hands. Now there's a better way to keep your nose clean and help your body protect itself. It's called Navage Nasal Care. Navage uses powered suction to flush out allergens, mucus, bacteria, and viruses. At Navage.com, CVS, Walgreens, Bed Bath, Target, and Rite Aid. Navage, N-A-V-A-G-E.
Hey renters, it's Ty Pennington for Guaranteed Rate. Stop paying your landlord's mortgage every month. Look, mortgage rates are still historically low, so go to rate.com now to get a mortgage on your first home and upgrade your life. Like a legit home office, a new deck for summer, maybe a pool, you name it. Guaranteed Rate can help you go from renting to buying like crazy fast. Start at rate.com today. That's rate.com.
Equal housing lender, subject to credit approval. Company NMLS ID 2611 and MLSConsumerAccess.org.
Hey y'all, are you tired of hearing that the South is just a bunch of racist rednecks? Well, tune in to Dixieland of the Proletariat podcast. We talk about Southern working class history and current events through a leftist perspective. Join Nelson, Senior Telecommunications Director Tommy, Comrade Kate, former pig farmer Tyler, and Brother William, wherever you stream your podcast. And good Lord willing and the creek don't rise, we'll see y'all next time. It's Dixieland of the Proletariat, y'all.
WVNN.
All right, welcome back to the Valley Labor Report. We have our friend Chad on the line. We were talking a little bit about training issues in Huntsville police and some of the broader criminal justice issues we have here in the Huntsville community. So, Chad, you still with us?
Yep, still here.
All right, so when we left off, you talked about how there has been some talk of training, particularly, adding mental health workers to these kind of calls. But the fear is that this could get dragged out, delayed. They have to talking about discussing it and analyzing it before they implement it. And people could suffer in the meantime.
And and let's be clear, it's not for lack of funding. The police are funded extremely well in Huntsville. I can't remember the numbers, but it's an insane amount of money that goes to police in Huntsville, Alabama.
Yeah, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I mean, compared to cities our size, I mean, we're in the top 10% of spending on police. So there's no shortage of money already. I mean, the concern about training is we really need the mayor and the police chief willing to buy into that. Otherwise, it is just going to become an excuse to spend more money on, bigger tools and not necessarily the human resources needed. And frankly, the institutional reform. Because with leadership excusing what's happening now, it's just very hard to expect that we're going to get real transparency.
Well, that's the thing that, I think pissed me off the most was seeing those statements yesterday from the chief and the mayor, because it was really a slap in the face to all of you guys, everybody who's been pushing for reform.
I mean, it's a slap in the face to the justice system in general. What they all tout as the greatest system in the world, as soon as it works in the favor of the public and not in the favor of their crony buddies, then all of a sudden it's called out as unjust. And it's like, you can't have it both ways. Either we got the greatest system in the world or we don't. And in this case, I think we got lucky. In many cases you don't. We've got people sitting in prisons right now for nonviolent crimes, for for simple possession or things like that, and it's worked in their favor. And when I say in their favor, I mean in the police's favor for so many years. And now all of a sudden, when the one time that it convicts one of your fellow brothers in the criminal justice system, is not that great. So yeah, I mean it's hypocritical. It's terrible.
Yeah, it really is, and especially that they're really only looking to the system to reinforce violence use, because there are two police officers on the other side of this case that also thought Darby handled this wrong.
Yeah.
No support from the mayor there, no support from the chief. So yeah, it's really really unfair to those officers as well. But
we pointed out before the show, it's worth saying again, the two police officers that thought that he had done wrong are now unemployed police officers. So keep that in the back of your mind.
Yeah, I think that they, despite having more experience in the police force, have been essentially driven out for not following that cultural line. So yeah, it's a little concerning that with Police Chief McMurray continuing even after a verdict to say that Darby is innocent. I don't think normal citizens are afforded that same luxury.
Right, and that's something I wondered, if this was a rank-and-file city of Huntsville employee, someone driving a city truck, and they got in an accident, would they get $125,000 of taxpayer money to defend them? Would they get public statements contradicting a jury verdict? So that's...
Yeah. If it was a garbage man
right.
that was out there picking up your trash that may have accidentally done something, would they support him the same way? I highly doubt it.
Yeah, almost certainly not. There would be a lot more talk about the state of that person's mind the day of than you get from the mayor about Darby.
Yeah, that's interesting if you say that. I wonder, because that probably would have been one of the first things that they rolled out was maybe this guy was on drugs. Or maybe this guy, and I didn't hear any of that from the mayor on maybe this officer was on some type of mind-altering substance.
Yeah, no, nothing about his long history or public relations problems or coworkers who thought that he had issues. So yeah, I mean, there's the average city employee is not going to get that kind of defense. And frankly, they'd be more transparent about what happened with the average city employee. The mayor has frequently said at city council that they're not going to comment on cases that are under active investigation or litigation. But here they are defending Darby seconds after the verdict comes out.
Right.
But we still can't get official comments on what happened with Alberta Rivas in South Huntsville or Bradley Pugh in 5 Points, because they're under investigation.
So, Chad, what do you have in terms of kind of where do we go from here? What are local activists pushing for? And, do you have any sort of call to action for folks in the community?
For folks in the community, I would really encourage that you reach out to City Council. We just had the HPCAC report come out regarding the events of the Black Lives Matter protests in June 1st and 3rd. And so City Council is pushing a lot of proposals, and we're waiting to see who's going to unite behind those. So
right.
I think if you're a citizen of Huntsville, a big one that we're looking at is transparency with the body cameras. Right now, it's impossible to get them released from HPD, and the mayor's protected that. So, body camera footage should be a matter of public record. I mean, we're paying for these body cameras,
right?
But no one can see what happens until Darby gets taken to trial. No one can see what happens in these other instances where people have alleged police abuse. So, I mean, I would encourage people to contact especially about the body camera footage. I think that there needs to be more transparency there.
It's awful interesting that the police's mantra has always been, if you're not doing anything wrong, what have you got to hide? You know, this whole, whenever they pull you over and they want to go through your car or come knock on your door and they want to go through your house, the mantra is always, if you're not doing anything wrong, what do you have to hide? And I would turn it around and say the same thing to the police that don't want to release a body cam footage. If you're not doing anything wrong, what have you got to hide by releasing the body cam footage? That should exonerate you from all accusations. But it's very interesting that they're being so protective of a video. You know,
they want it both ways.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they're happy to point out that, you know, sometimes people do understand the situation differently after they've seen the video. But you know, at this point, they've even withheld video from the oversight board. Yeah. So why are we paying for body cameras if no one in the city is allowed to see them, including people specifically tasked with oversight of the police? Yeah.
And is it really an oversight board if you can't even get access to that?
Or interview the police? I mean, they've been refused, you know, to even be able to talk to the police. So.
Yeah, which again made no sense at all. Like they stopped the oversight board from speaking with anyone in HPD because they were worried about Fifth Amendment protections, but they used those same protections to try to stop evidence from coming out in the Darby trial. Yeah. So the city clearly understands how the ruling applies. They just aren't cooperating with city council when city council asks for these reviews.
Right. Well, Chad, what is there anything that you didn't get a chance to talk about this morning? Anything that you think we really need to know as we kind of wrap things up this morning?
Yeah, I mean, the big thing, if you haven't read the HPCAC report or any of the summaries, you know, Ashley Remkiss from AL.com did a great summary of what's in there. I think there's a lot of cultural problems in there, whether it's, you know, captains telling junior officers to turn off their body cameras while they were at the protest, or violence used against citizens. I would encourage people to go see what's in that report. You can find it at HuntsvillePoliceReview.com. Or again, there's great summaries out there from the media. And especially for like labor workers who would be concerned with things like the ability to strike. I think there's a lot of concern about how Huntsville's treating protests. And so I would encourage people to check that out if they haven't, because I think the problems are pretty evident, and it'll probably make you want to call your city council member.
Yeah, absolutely, and I'm glad you brought that up because we mentioned that as well, that what could be applied to a protest can be applied to a picket line.
Yeah,
so
thankfully we didn't see that protest bill out of the state go through this past week, because that's what I've told all my members is, you know, if this protest bill goes through and we just happen to be on a picket line and stop traffic, then all of a sudden we got a felony. You know, and that is not good whatsoever. So
right, and we already know, you know, how that law would be applied. It's not going to be applied towards the bosses and the scabs. So, thanks, Chad, for calling in. We got more on the other side of the break about teacher appreciation and the labor movement across the country. Thank you so much for joining us.
You're listening to the Valley Labor Report with David Story and Jacob Morrison.
The attorneys at Maples, Tucker, and Jacobs have stood with the working people of Alabama for over 40 years. providing skilled legal representation for your workplace injury claims. When you are injured on the job, it can be a scary time, but the attorneys at Maples, Tucker & Jacobs have the experience to guide you through the process to make sure that you and your family are properly taken care of and your rights are protected. If you need help, call the attorneys at Maple, Tucker & Jacobs at 855-617-9333 or visit online at www.mtandj.com. No representation is made that the quality of legal services is greater than the quality of legal services provided by other law firms. The Valley Labor Report is also supported by listeners like you. If you value the work that we are doing, injecting a different perspective into talk radio, and you have the means, consider signing up for a monthly donation on patreon.com/The Valley Labor Report. Again, that's patreon.com/The Valley Labor Report to support our work and keep us on the air. If you're looking for contractors with lower than average EMR and TRIR, if you need to supplement a workforce at any level for any amount of time, if you need iron workers that come trained and certified at no extra cost, or if you need workers from superintendent down to general laborer and you're looking to start work on a project or you're unhappy with your current contractor situation, you need to call my friend Jeb Miles with the Iron Workers Local 477. They only work with the best in the business, vetted contractors, and can do all kinds of jobs from roofing to steel and bridge erection, from welding to heavy rigging, from structural repairs to machinery alignment, and much more. They supply manpower on 4 of the 5 largest projects in North Alabama, so you know they're legit. If you need good quality, safe, efficient, diligent, and knowledgeable workers on your job, then you need the Iron Workers Local 477. Call Jeb Miles at 256-383-3334. That's 256-383-3334, or via email at local477@bellsouth.net, and make sure you tell them that you heard about them on the Valley Labor Report.
You can depend on Yeffy for the latest news during your drive home. WVNN Afternoons.
Let's go!
Good morning. Good morning. Thank you for joining us on the Valley Labor Report. So we've talked a little bit about criminal justice. Let's switch gears. This mentioned some issues that are happening in the labor movement across the country, and as well as some of that brief little bit of hope we got from the Montgomery legislature this past week. So I wanted to mention that we do have some new organizing drives across the South. Over at Duke University Press, there are over 120 workers that have just filed for an election May 3rd. That has been covered in Labor Notes by Joe Stapleton. Talked about lots of high turnover, low pay, and discrimination. Those issues really led those workers to join together, even though it's a variety of different types of people with a variety of different types of jobs. Really proud to see them over in Durham, North Carolina, organizing a union. We send our solidarity and best of luck to those workers. Hopefully a successful union and hopefully a successful contract.
Yeah.
And also wanted to mention maybe the biggest labor story this past week, as far as a news story, is up in Portland, Maine. It's quite a while from here, obviously, but almost 2,000 nurses at the Maine Medical Center have won an election, which apparently is the biggest election through the labor board since 2018.
Yeah, that's tremendous, and it's no doubt goes without speaking to the terrible working conditions that nurses have had to work through this past year and a half.
Oh, yes. I mean, it's hard enough to be a nurse even in normal times, but I can only imagine during the pandemic, and you're dealing with a lot of extra safety risk, and you're also dealing with just insane patient ratios, which I know is one of the biggest issues that National Nurses United has been fighting for, is to actually get some mandates in terms of how many patients you could carry on your load as a nurse. And that is through NNU, National Nurses United. So the Maine State Nurses Association, they won their vote 1,001 to 750. So shout out to those nurses. Way to go, sisters. Glad to see you with that union.
Yeah, and brothers.
And brothers, too.
Hey, watch it now. And for the people out there listening that may be nurses, you know, the Machinists Union has a healthcare component of the Machinists Union that organizes specifically workers, healthcare workers, what are these people that are in the rehabilitation workers and things like that. So there are some places for you to get involved and get organized in your workplace if you so choose.
Yeah, and that's something a lot of people don't realize if they're not very familiar with labor, but you don't have to find a union that has like your job title in the name.
Exactly.
Just because you're a nurse, you don't have to call Nurses United.
Yeah.
You may have the machinist available to help you. You know, there are workers up in, I believe it's New York University right now that are organized through UAW.
Yeah.
That have been out on strike.
CWA does a lot of the work with the campus workers, so yeah. I mean, the biggest thing when it comes to organized labor is you want someone that understands how to organize people, and you want someone that can listen, but understands how to negotiate contracts for you. That's the big thing. You know, we can negotiate contracts for anybody. It's all basically the same thing, no matter what job you're doing. You know, you want better wages, better benefits, better working conditions. You want to have a voice in your workplace. Those things don't change just because your job title does.
Right. Those are universal values.
Universal. Yep.
Yeah. So if you are a nurse or if you are any kind of worker listening here in Alabama or elsewhere, and you do not have a union on the job, you need one.
Yeah.
And if you're not sure who to talk to, feel free to hit us up, and we can try to plug you in to the appropriate folks to get you organized, to provide you the institutional support and resources you may need to kick off that drive. We're happy to support that. That's really one of the reasons why we do this show, is to amplify the efforts of workers organizing already, but also to encourage everyone else who isn't organized to get organized. A couple other things happening in the world of labor. Labor Notes put out a great article about some changes in the post office.
Yeah.
I know we've talked to the various postal workers here on the show. Please keep an eye on the post office because they are being sabotaged from the inside out.
Yep.
Which is really a perfect segue to talking about public schools later in the show. But, you know, they have a corrupt and incompetent postmaster general.
Yep.
And his plan is to sabotage the Postal Service. They just came out with a 10-year plan, apparently, and it really is to transform it into a more corporate entity and to really help the competition.
Yeah.
So, you know, they are promising slower delivery, increased cost, and reduced access to post offices. What a winning formula.
That's a heck of a public service, isn't
right.
it?
So, I mean, who wouldn't want to go participate in that kind of post office?
Well, I mean, that's the scam that they always run. You know, it's never-ending scam for a lot of the conservatives to nominate and appoint these people to get into a public service arena to dismantle they will dismantle that service. They will cut as much labor out as they can. They will increase costs, and then they will turn around to the public 5 years later and say, look at how terrible this is. We need to do away with this. You know, it's the same scam every time.
It's a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah.
You know, so they put billionaire Betsy in charge of education.
Yeah.
To make it worse. They put oil polluters in charge of the EPA to make it worse.
Yeah.
So that's something that I want everybody to keep your eye on. The post office, our postal workers, brothers and sisters, are really going to need our support in the coming years just to hold on to what they have, much less actually make some gains for what they deserve.
Yep. And for anybody that talks about champions the military and big supporters of the military, the nation's largest employer of veterans is the Postal Service. There are more veterans in the Postal Service than in any other business in the nation. So we need to support these brothers and sisters that have transitioned out of the military and into a civilian job, and now they're looking at basically getting screwed over.
Right. And I think there's a lot of similarities between postal workers and education workers, you know, it's two of the really last remaining public services we have. You know, and the more I think about it, the more I see that public schools are pretty much the last threads of our very threadbare social safety net. You know, where else can you actually get some guaranteed childcare, guaranteed breakfast and lunch, you know, get plugged into social workers, nurses, and other, you know, essential services for families? And so the post office and public schools both have been under attack for quite some time and under sabotage for quite some time.
Yeah, and I think it's important to point out for everyone that as we transition into talking about Teacher Appreciation Week for the next 30 minutes, it's important for people that are listening to understand what the end game is for breaking down the public service of public schools. It is not to make them better. When you talk about privatization, what we're talking about is the exact same thing that's happened with healthcare since Nixon. You slowly privatize, and it don't happen overnight. It's like boiling the toad. Mm-hmm. You don't get hot overnight. But eventually, in about 20 years, you look around, and the only people that are getting health care right now are the wealthy, the working, middle working class. I don't say middle class, but those in that area. No one else has health care, and it's going to be the same thing with public schools. It will get to the point to where we've privatized so much, the only people that are going to be able to afford an education are the wealthy. And most of the working class that can't afford to send their children to a private school are going to be sitting there going, what do we do? And the same way that with the healthcare system, a lot of the working poor is sitting here today saying, what do we do? And everybody's saying, we don't do nothing for you. That's going to get to the point of the same way with education. And it's a ploy. It is a ploy to keep the rich, to keep getting richer, and to create this neoliberal concept of we're all equal across the world. They want to create the point to where we are starving so bad that we will work for the same wages that people in Yugoslavia or in Mexico or in China, the same ones that they demonize right now.
It's a race to the bottom.
Exactly.
It is a race to the bottom.
And by privatizing education, that creates that race. That speeds that up to the point to where poor working class kids aren't getting educated. If they are, it's so poorly, it'll be the absolutely bare minimum, of education system.
Well, and I think you made a great point about who the Postal Service employs, because both the post offices and the public education system are two of the only careers left that are open to ordinary folks to be able to access a pension and a union and halfway decent health care. So that's another reason why both of these institutions have been targeted, to bust those unions and to lower the standards in this race to the bottom for all working people across this country. So we're looking forward to talking a little bit more about teacher appreciation on the other side of the break, but I also wanted to mention our post office brothers and sisters and the struggles they're facing, because really we're all in it together. So stay tuned, talk about public education and more on the other side.
You're listening to the Valley Labor Report with David Story and Jacob Morrison. This is News Talk 770 AM, 92.5 FM, WVNN. News starts now.
Coronavirus positivity rates in the U.S. continue their decline, but vaccination rates are also declining, says ABC's Trevor Alt.
Health officials are hoping Pfizer's new request for full approval of its vaccine might encourage those who are still weary. But this week, the country's vaccination rate fell to 2 million shots a day, which is a 20% drop from the week before and a 35% drop from last month.
At least 25 people were killed in Afghanistan after a bomb blast in West Kabul. Afghan government officials say many of the dead are young students. The blast was near a school. Pipeline operator Colonial Pipeline says it's been forced to halt operations on a pipeline that transports more than 100 million gallons of fuel each day because of a cyber attack. Pipeline brings gasoline and jet fuel from Texas to the New York City area. U.S. Space Force says the re-entry window for a Chinese rocket could be anywhere from 7:30 p.m. to 1:30 a.m. Eastern. Space Force estimates a 75% chance it lands in the ocean. Brian Clark, ABC News.
The attorneys at Maples, Tucker, and Jacobs have stood with the working people of Alabama for over 40 years, providing skilled legal representation for your workplace injury claims. When you are injured on the job, it can be a scary time, but the attorneys at Maples, Tucker, and Jacobs have the experience to guide you through the process to make sure that you and your family are properly taken care of and your rights are protected. If you need help, call the attorneys at Maple, Tucker, and Jacobs at 855-617-9333 or visit online at www.mtandj.com. No representation is made that the quality of legal services is greater than the quality of legal services provided by other law firms. The Valley Labor Report is also supported by listeners like you. If you value the work that we are doing, injecting a different perspective into talk radio, and you have the means, consider signing up for a monthly donation on patreon.com/The Valley Labor Report. Again, that's patreon.com/The Valley Labor Report to support our work and keep us on the air.
Have an Amazon Echo? Just say, Alexa, play WVNN. And you'll always have the only radio station of relevance in Alabama, WVNN. WVNN.
Charge more than that. A population burned up, blood dry. The marginalized multiply. And you'd like to fight. You've raided the wheel. Now they're tearing you apart.
Welcome back to the Valley Labor Report. Thank you so much for joining us. I appreciate your patience today dealing with me instead of Jacob Morrison, our fearless leader.
It's been wonderful.
So hopefully I've done the show justice today. I just appreciate the opportunity to try to learn from Jacob and David and the great work they've been doing building this show over the past year. So this past week was Teacher Appreciation Week, and that's, as I mentioned, dear to my heart. And it's really dear to the heart of all working class people because of the importance public education has for all of our communities. Really a community lives and dies on its public schools, as does the extent that we have any democracy in this country. It really starts with our public education system.
Yep.
And something, we talked about on the other side is this attack of privatization. And, privatization in the nutshell is converting public money into private hands.
Yeah.
That's what it is. Here in Huntsville, Alabama, it has been ground zero for corporate education reform and privatization. And where often they start with the most vulnerable. No surprise there. That's sort of how it works in our capitalist system here. You target the weakest first, and our school support staff are often the first, folks that are targeted by this privatization. And we're talking about your cafeteria workers, security guards, custodians, even secretaries, receptionists, clerical workers, all these folks without whom the schools do not operate. I mean, if you go into a school and you want to know what's going on, you probably need to talk to the head custodian and the secretary in the office.
Yeah.
Because that's who's really making sure things are running smoothly. And we've seen here in Huntsville and across the country this trend of privatizing these employees. So they're using public tax dollars to contract with for-profit companies, these various vendors. And why they do that ostensibly is to save taxpayer money.
Well, their claim.
That's right. So that's what they claim is they're going to save taxpayer money at the expense of those workers.
Yeah.
So, the case study of Huntsville, Alabama is a good one because over the past decade or so, you saw this massive outsourcing of support workers. So now instead of a custodian or a cafeteria worker working for a Huntsville City School District, where they might have actual health insurance and a retirement pension. They are working for these for-profit companies, temp services like Spur, which used to be called Appleton, Kelly Services, EBSCO, There's all sorts of them, local and outside of state, that come in, and they operate like a temp agency, and they contract with the school system. It's not a coincidence that often the people who are involved in these companies are some of the largest donors to school board elections. And so these folks are just screwed because they have no job security. They have little to no benefits. They can't gain due process rights. They can't pay into the state pension system. And, that is where often this privatization starts.
And you have to question. I mean, it don't take a rocket scientist to sit down and figure out, okay, we are paying the custodians, the cooks in the schools directly out of public funds, the tax dollars that we all pay. No, there's no one that's in between them. So the money that we're paying them is their money.
Right.
It don't take a rocket scientist to figure out when we privatize it, and now we're having to go through a third-party agency,
A middleman,
and they're getting their cut. It don't take a rocket scientist to figure out that, guess what? We're not saving money. We're paying more. The difference is somebody, well, for example, with my ex-representative Ed Henry, that's on this radio station quite often, that was charged with
oh, I forgot he was out of jail.
Yeah, I don't think he served any time, believe it or not. But the whole thing is they're always working to enrich their buddies, and that's exactly what this privatization scam is you create this business and we'll pay you and you'll get a cut and you can employ them instead of us. And under the auspices, like you said, of saving taxpayer dollars, how does it save taxpayer dollars if we're paying somebody else to pay that person instead of us just paying that person? It's insane.
Right. So we're not saving taxpayer money, and we're screwing the workers in the process. And what you get is extremely high turnover.
Yeah.
It's hard to keep your school staffed. Who wants to sign up for that?
Yeah.
Especially when in some cases you can make more in the fast food industry or in retail than going to work for these temp services, and you don't have any future. You can't attain any sort of security or pension or health care. So it makes the schools harder to staff. It hurts the services provided to the students and the educators, which then irritates the people involved, the families, the stakeholders, which then gets them irritated at the public school system. So then these privatizers come around and say, well, see, we told you there was a problem in our school system.
Yep.
Give us more money, give us more contracts, and we'll fix it.
Yeah, well, and as anybody that's been in the labor movement for more than a year knows, this is the start. Because what you'll see next is after they've privatized all of these individuals, you'll see them going towards the teachers or the teaching assistants. And they'll say, well, we need to make them, instead of employees of the school, they'll be independent contractors.
Right.
And they'll have to negotiate independently on their own, individually. And that will begin to fail because it always begins to fail without a doubt. And just like we were talking about with the post office earlier, in 10, 15 years, they'll say, look, we told you this was a failing system. We created they're not going to say it,
right,
but we created the failing system so we could begin to outsource and privatize everything.
So then they can sell you the solution to the failure they created.
Exactly.
And right here in the 5th Congressional District, we have a gentleman named Casey Wardynski running for Congress. He was superintendent in Huntsville City Schools. He was really the privatizer in chief. He was quite the innovator in terms of ways to screw over his employees and ways to privatize public money. He was using public funds to hire a political consultant to help do PR work. He had public money going to a consulting agency to do HR work, in addition to these workers that were being outsourced. And he also intentionally created one of the highest teacher turnover rates in the state.
Yeah.
So people obviously express concern about high teacher turnover and difficulties in finding good teachers in schools. But some of these folks are doing this on purpose.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think and here's the thing. And you were an educator, still are an educator, maybe not actively employed in that, but you are an educator. You are professionally trained.
I'll always be an educator in my heart.
Exactly. So here's the point, because for the past, 5 years, we've had all the parents complaining about Common Core. We have a lot of discussion around the education system is failing us. You need only to look to your legislators. Do the educators in a public school system get to set what their materials are going to be? I mean, it's
right.
It is not the educator's fault. It's not the teacher's fault that your child may not be learning as quickly, because the legislator sets all of this.
Right. It's not the educator's fault that there's 15 too many kids in your child's class.
Yep.
It's not the educator's fault that they don't have the special education aids that your child needs for their IEP. It's not the educator's fault that the building they're going to is falling apart and is covered in mold and asbestos.
Yep.
And these are the type of issues that our public education workers are facing, whether they're the nurses or the teachers, the librarians, the support staff. And you're right. The Alabama legislature plays a huge role in that. In the aftermath of the Great Recession, a little over a decade ago, Alabama had some of the steepest cuts to K-12 education in the nation. So, this week, as they brag about the new education budget that's been implemented, which, of course, it is better than last year, and which was better than the year before, and that's great. But really all we're doing at this point is making up for lost ground, because now we have an entire cohort of students throughout their time in a K-12 education system who've been educated under austerity, under budget cuts, under corporate reform, under standardized testing, because that is another way in which they make money off our schools. Yeah. They implement new tests, which with new tests comes new curriculum, new textbooks you have to purchase, new software you have to purchase. And, of course, that collects your students' data. Yeah. They have to have their precious data. They don't give a crap about kids learning, but they really, really care about the data. They have to see good data. They want to have a report card for the school with the data on it. They want third-party vendors to have access to this data. So there are all kinds of ways in which private interests have found ways to make public education a commodity.
Yeah, probably.
And a source of profit.
Yeah. All of that to say, hug your teacher, give them
Amen.
A gift card.
Don't violate the ethics law. God forbid you give them a gift card that is over $25.
I don't know. I don't know anything about the ethics law.
Just don't tell anybody what you gave them.
Don't tell anybody. Yeah, but I mean, it's coming. The school year's coming to a close. Teachers.
It's been a hell of a year for teachers and everybody in schools this year.
Teachers, nurses, workers in general have really dug in and saved this country this year through one of the worst health care crises that we've seen, certainly in my generation and in numerous generations. The teachers deserve much more than what they're getting right now.
Absolutely. They have really picked up the slack.
Workers.
Absolutely. And that's exactly right. It has been the teachers, the nurses, the fast food workers, the delivery drivers,
the grocery store workers,
all these folks that are quote unquote essential.
Yeah.
They're essential to keeping our economy going and really our whole society going, but they're not essential when it comes time to pay a living wage, or to give them a voice at the bargaining table, or to guarantee dignity in retirement and health care.
Yeah. And the one and this weekend, I guess we should point out, we're coming up on the end of this segment. We got one more, so y'all stick around. But as we're talking about essential workers, the one essential worker that gets left out more than anybody is mothers. And this Mother's Day weekend,
That's right.
Without the mothers out there, we wouldn't be what we are. So, a big shout out, happy Mother's Day to all the mothers, especially to my wife and my mom. My wife is religiously watching us every week. So, I love her to death and couldn't have been the person that I am without her. So happy Mother's Day to all you ladies out there, and to the single dads that may be taking care of your kids as well.
Absolutely.
They're just as much a mother as anybody.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so happy Mother's Day to my mother, to my wife, to all those women out there and men who are taking up and serving as de facto parents and grandparents for kids. And, to tie it back into education, let's not forget that teaching is a very predominantly female workforce. And don't think that doesn't factor into why they are bullied like they are and why they are demeaned the way they are. There is some aspect there where they recognize it's mostly women doing this work, and it's dismissed that way.
Yeah, and they've always been the caretakers of our society. I mean, it all has the same tie, and they're dedicated caretakers of our children and of society in general. They are what frame what we know as society right now.
Absolutely. So, this is the end of Teacher Appreciation Week, and I do really, truly want to extend our appreciation to not just teachers, but all folks working in our public schools, because you make such a difference in the lives of young people. And as I mentioned earlier, you're about one of the last vestiges left of a really broken social safety net in this country. Yeah. And you're helping keep kids fed. You're helping to keep them safe. And, without you guys, our communities really, really do struggle. So we want to thank you. We want to encourage you to get organized, talk with your coworkers, and start talking with those legislators and superintendents and school board members. Thanks for what you do. Keep fighting, stay strong, finish out the school year. We love you.
And the community rally around them. The community needs to rally around them.
Absolutely.
Folks, we got one more segment. We shall be back in just a second. Don't turn the dial. Don't turn off YouTube, Facebook, whatever you're watching on. Stick with us.
You're listening to the Valley Labor Report with David Story and Jacob Morrison.
The Valley Labor Report is also supported by listeners like you. If you value the work that we are doing, injecting a different perspective into talk radio, and you have the means, consider signing up for a monthly donation on patreon.com/The Valley Labor Report. Again, that's patreon.com/The Valley Labor Report to support our work and keep us on the air. The American Federation of Government Employees, AFGE, Local 1858, believes all workers are entitled to fairness, dignity, and respect. AFGE also knows that the best way to guarantee proper treatment is for workers to stand together, united, looking out for each other. In AFGE, we fight for workers every day to ensure a workplace that is safe and free from harassment. If you're a federal employee and want to be a part of this union, to protect yourself and your fellow workers, call 256-876-4880. The attorneys at Maples, Tucker, and Jacobs have stood with the working people of Alabama for over 40 years, providing skilled legal representation for your workplace injury claims. When you are injured on the job, it can be a scary time, but the attorneys at Maples, Tucker, and Jacobs have the experience to guide you through the process to make sure that you and your family are properly taken care of and your rights are protected. If you need help, call the attorneys at Maple, Tucker, and Jacobs at 855-617-9333 or visit online at www.mtandj.com. No representation is made that the quality of legal services is greater than the quality of legal services provided by other law firms.
WVNN. Depend on it.
Lonely dead, stuck, bleeding pig. Lonely dead, shot.
Welcome back. This is the Valley Labor Report. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. Really enjoyed our conversations today. Appreciate all of you listening and viewing, wherever you may be listening or viewing. If you like what we're up to, please like the page. Please subscribe to the channel. Please share it with your friends. Spread the word. We are trying to spread the gospel of solidarity in North Alabama and across this country. David's going to tell us a little bit about a great benefit we have coming up in a couple weeks. You want to share what we have planned to support those striking miners down in Brookwood?
I mean, we're still putting this together, but the thing that we're trying to get out right now is we have 1,100 workers in Brookwood, Alabama that have been on a picket line for now going on 7 weeks without a paycheck.
Since April 1st, right?
Yep. They are holding the line. They are doing a wonderful job. It's one of the biggest strikes that we've seen in Alabama in 20 years, and we need to support them. And why do we need to support them? Because the company was running the ground 10 years ago by Walter Cole, and basically filed bankruptcy. And at the time that they filed bankruptcy, a private venture vulture capitalist swooped in and purchased it up and renegotiated a contract with the workers. And the workers said, you know what? We're starting from scratch. We will take $7 to $8 an hour pay cut to try to get this company back up on its feet. $7 to $8 an hour pay cut. I mean, anybody out there that works for a living understands what kind of sacrifice they made 7 years ago.
That is no joke.
So now, in the past, on this contract, they have had 2 years of record profits, record coal pulled out of the ground. The company is flourishing, and what they're simply asking for is get us back to where we were. Get us back to a fair wage. We sacrificed while the supervisors were getting $30,000 a quarter bonuses, pulling all this coal out of the ground. We sacrificed. The workers have sacrificed. Get us back to at least what we were making before, to where everybody can share in these profits that we, the workers, are generating. And so, and the company is asking them to make more concessions. Not only are they saying, no, we're not going to get you back there, we want you to pay a little bit more for health care.
That is just so insulting. So insulting after they have, revived this company and brought these record profits.
Yep. And so what we have intentions of doing a very long stream. I'm hearing from Jacob. He wants to do 48-hour solid live stream at the Mine Workers Union Hall to raise money for our brothers and sisters down there. So it should be, I think we're looking at the 29th. So that's 3 weeks from today. I think we're going to actually start on a Friday. Talking to him this past week, and we're going to have we're going to have a ton of special guests. I mean, friends of the show, Dixieland of the Proletariat will be coming up to chip in. The Revolutions Per Minute, we were on their radio show out of New York City this past week. They were gracious enough to have us on. They will be coming on. I hear that there may be a few good bands that's coming up to do some free shows. Lee Baines has said he's going to come and do basically an entire free show of his album that hasn't even been released yet. It's going to be tremendous. I think I'm being forced to cook some, but yeah. But the whole point is, we are going to be asking for y'all to donate. If you can chip in $1, if you can chip in $20, whatever you can chip in, all of it's going to the mine workers down there, and we're going to keep supporting them and get them back up to the fair wage that they deserve.
Absolutely. And really excited about this. I hope that you guys will get excited about it and really show out for these brothers who are down there holding the line.
Yeah.
As David mentioned, it's a historic strike, and so there's a historic opportunity for all of us to demonstrate our solidarity. That's what it's all about.
And if you're in the area, here's the thing: if you're in Alabama, there's nothing that's keeping you. And most of us are vaccinated now. There's nothing that's keeping you from driving down. If you enjoy the show, call in. We'll get you on the air. If you're in the local area, drive down and
come
sit
hang
down
out
and talk with us. Yeah, I mean, we're going to need a lot of participation. I can't imagine. It's mind-boggling to fill that much of a live stream with content, but we're going to do the best that we can with what we've got.
So, yeah, if there's anything you've been really itching to talk about, if you are an expert, even in your own head, if you are an expert and you feel like you need to call and fill up some time in a couple weekends, we'd love to have you do that. Reach out to the show. So we're excited about that. We're looking forward to really supporting those miners. And as you know, we're wrapping up today. I do want to mention something that came out this week. A couple things in Alabama. We mentioned there was actually rare good news. A medical marijuana bill has been passed by both chambers. We are awaiting the governor's signature on that. Now, it is more restrictive than a lot of other states in terms of as expected, in terms of who can qualify and how that's going to work. But wow.
It's a good start to getting away from the opioid, the opioid, I don't want to say pandemic, but the opioid catastrophe that the drug makers has placed upon all of our family, because every one of us, I don't care who you are, you may not know that you know someone, but I promise you, you know someone with an addiction problem, and I've got family and brothers and sisters that are on methadone, that are on Suboxone, trying to get off of these terrible opiates. And if this is a pathway to help them out, then we need to support it 100%, because the alternative is people like we've seen in YouTube videos for the past 10 years, people dying in the streets from this drug. So
we've lost way too many good people to this drug epidemic, and including lots of dear friends and folks here in this community just recently. So yeah, we're glad to see the Alabama legislature for a change actually do something nice for the people of Alabama. Keep up the good work, guys.
Yeah, believe it or not, I mean, we're not sitting here, and I think that really shows the difference between our show and everyone else's show, is when the other party does something good, we are praising them. We're not sitting here trying to tear down what they're doing, as opposed to what you see every other show.
On that note, let me tear down. Let me tear them down just a sec.
I'm saying we're going to tear them down on bad policy.
Absolutely.
But when they do something good, we're going to cheer them on.
That's right. So one negative thing is that it did come out in a new report that 38% of Alabama's COVID deaths was due to the insurance gap. Now, we've talked about expanding Medicaid in this state on this radio show, and we need everyone's support, especially those of you who live here, to really push the needle on that. We must expand Medicaid. Too many working class sisters and brothers do not have affordable health care, and this is an easy way to help them and to help our economy. So thank you to everyone who has tuned in today. Thank you for putting up with me as your host this morning. Jacob, when you listen to this, I hope I did you justice.
Listening. He's been texting constantly throughout the whole show. He's listening right now. I don't know what he's doing. So
all your critiques, your complaints, criticism, please send that to Jacob Morrison. If you have any praise, please send it to Adam and David. We've enjoyed it today. Be good to your mamas. Be good to your teachers and your nurses. This has been their week, and we appreciate them.
We'll see y'all next week.